Hey everyone, today I will be teaching you all of the most important shortcuts for you to win more in Mario Kart World on the regular 30 tracks. This is especially important if you play online, since you'll run into a lot of really good players, and if they know the shortcuts and you don't, then you'll have a really tough time winning. So I'll show you a lot of the important ones, but not ones that are too hard. These are ones you should be able to get pretty quickly. Starting off with this charge jump, aim for this line, mushroom, hit the tree, and that's a huge shortcut. And fun fact, you can take the next one without a mushroom, but we will not be getting into stuff this difficult. Look at that, I'm already in first place just using one mushroom and taking the most important shortcuts. So to pull off this shortcut successfully, after the previous jump, you want to start charging a charge jump by holding R. Then when you get to this line on the ground, hold left, use a mushroom, and release R at the same time to get the jump. This will send you roughly towards the tree, and if you need to move more left, then you can do a left air trick. As long as you hit the tree, then you will get enough distance. Now, as we go through this guide, I will also give some other tips of what you can do. If you have a golden mushroom, you can actually use the golden mushroom to take that shortcut, followed by the next shortcut that I showed that I did without a mushroom. And that is a massive combo of shortcuts that you can do with just one item. If you've watched any high-level Mario Kart World, you know exactly what is coming up next. This is Bowser's Castle. Starting off with the turn skip shortcut, you charge jump onto the wall, up to the rail, and then you jump to this wall, jump to this wall, jump to the blue sign, and do a bunch of tricks to move you over. Look at my lead, it's so huge. I started in last place. It's been like 10 seconds. When I play this track online, I get massive leads. It's so important to know this shortcut. But also, the one coming up next, this trick right there, and then hit this wall, trick at the end of it, spam right tricks, and you land over here. The huge shortcuts on Bowser's Castle, and if you don't know them, you're pretty much guaranteeing you lose. These are some of the most important shortcuts in the entire game. Of course, we're going to go into more detail here. For the first shortcut, hold R before you land so you charge a charge jump and then jump onto the wall before the corner. Then right as you pass the corner, you can trick onto the rail. Ride the rail to this corner and trick to the right. Go just past the dark line in the wall and trick to the left. Starting here, you want to hold the opposite direction on the stick from where you're going. So you are going to the left, hold right on the stick. After you touch the wall, hold left, and this takes you to the blue sign, which will auto trick for you, and launch you into the air and do some more left tricks to land back on the track. Now, I know that was a lot, but trust me, this shortcut is actually a little bit easier than it looks. But it will take some practice, and if you want some more tips and common mistakes, you can check out my video on this shortcut, plus how to do variations of it. And then for the next shortcut, after the glider, go towards the off-road, specifically towards this one line of lava sticking out in the off-road, and as soon as you touch it, trick. Then you want to land relatively low on the wall so you have more time to ride the wall and build speed, then trick off near the top and do more right tricks. Again, this takes a lot of practice, but it can be 100% consistent. On Mario Bros. Circuit, there's this shortcut on the left here where you have to go through the tires, and typically you will need a mushroom to take this shortcut. It's a very important one, important to know how to do it with the mushroom. You just go in here and ride the rail, but there is a way to do this one without a mushroom, and it's very important. So first off, if another player in front of you takes the shortcut, look, somebody in front of me took it. You can just charge jump in. Very simple, but this only works if you're not in first place. So if the tires are still there, you can head over to the left here and charge jump against this green sign. And that just jumps over the tires entirely. Very important to know that one. And of course, you can also jump over the tires with a feather. When you're playing in regular races, you actually can go for this on lap 1, but it's very risky and depends on your starting position. If you're positioned in second, third, or fourth as you start the race, then you probably have the best chance of going for this. But if other players online also go for it, then it can really mess you up as the board might be gone by then. So just in general, I will have guides for every single track. At least I'm working on it. So depending on when you see this video, I may have a lot of track guides already. So make sure you just search for them on YouTube or on my channel, and there's a good chance you'll find them. And that can be the best way to learn some more of the details about these tracks that you otherwise may not know. On Crown City, there are some important shortcuts to know. For example, there is this one right here, where there's a grass shortcut. Very big shortcut right here. However, in this video, I will not be covering simple, obvious shortcuts like this, because this is something you can easily figure out. So of course, more grass shortcuts here at the end of Crown City, super important, but the most important thing you have to know afterwards that does not actually require any items is to charge jump onto this green rail right here. You can even do an extra trick if you know where to do it, and then you just jump off there, hit the tree, and land right here. It takes some practice, but honestly, it's not too hard. And then you can do some ending stuff here. Oh. On Koopa Troopa Beach, there are 3 good mushroom shortcuts, and they are simple grass shortcuts. You know, you just look at the side there, there's grass. But the most important one, the biggest one, is right here. You want to drift to the left after the item boxes, charge jump, mushroom, and just go over here. And see how much that cuts off? That is really, really nice. And then, of course, more grass shortcuts. Very easy to find. Dino Jungle has a really big shortcut that is just so important to take, and it's actually too big for one mushroom, but you can do it. And so right here, after this section, just turn in, charge a charge jump, and use a mushroom as well. When you release the charge jump, it takes you right out of the off-road, and that is the fastest way to do the grass shortcut on Dino Jungle. And then, of course, there are other shortcuts, like if you go over here onto the rail, right trick, and then take the trick onto the wall here. And there's also this one right here where you can go on the dinosaur's back, and then trick at the dips to the right. I'm catching up to Wario here. Yeah, so in general, just keep in mind, there are a lot more shortcuts than I am showing you in this video, but I'm just showing you the most important ones and how to do them well, because these are the ones that are going to win you races. Next up is Great Question Block Ruins, the track with some of the coolest shortcuts in the whole game, and you have to learn these. They are so important, but also they are just incredibly fun. I love the shortcuts on this track. It makes Mario Kart World so fun. Alright, so I'm going to teach you something here you may not have known about, which is that after your item box sound rolls twice, you can actually press L to get your item faster. And I'm not just saying this for fun. This is very important on this track. Hit L. Look, I got mushrooms. I can take the shortcut now. And that's extremely important because watch this. If you don't do that, and you go through the item, I don't know what my item is. And look, oh, it could have taken the shortcut, but I don't even know that because I didn't get my items soon enough. That's why it's so important to do that on the beginning of this track. Now, if you already had mushrooms, then it's a bit different. You actually can still get an item, but you want to curve straight into the shortcut. Use a mushroom and release the orange mini turbo a bit before the end of the grass. Otherwise, you may completely lose your drift. And riding this rail makes that section so fast because it's a sharp turn, drifting is a bit slow, and rails keep you going at full speed. Now, of course, you're not always going to have a mushroom, so you can't always take that shortcut. But if you cannot take it, then you'll at least want to do this. Charge up to a rainbow mini turbo, charge a charge jump here, and then go on this coin and charge up off. That puts you on this rail, and see how much faster that is? I just passed all of them because it's just so much faster to be on a rail than the ground when you are taking a turn. For this next section, mainly what you want to do is go down the middle, take the boost panel, and then start a charge jump right after the first coin. Charge jump off here, and then head towards this ring, head towards the wall, and jump off the wall. That's the fastest way to take that section, and it is so fun! Now, this one takes a lot of practice, but there is another way you can do it, which is by going over to this rail, and then trick and trick, hit this pole for a trick, and then just use a trick boost to go off here instead of a charge jump. And then the rest is the same. Ride this wall, jump off. One of my favorite shortcuts in the game. Now, I'll quickly explain the charge jump method as it is easier. After you charge jump off the edge, you want to aim for the ring, and this takes some experience. Once you hit the ring, don't go directly to the left, or you may end up too high on the wall. Let yourself fall just a little bit on the wall, and this gives you the perfect amount of height to jump off at the end. Next up is Faraway Oasis, and you may not realize just how slow the water section is. So if you just go off of here, and your plan is to drive in the water, this is extremely slow, and you don't want to be doing this. The turns are slow, and it's just a horrible path to take. You will lose if you take this path. The beauty of Mario Kart World is that there is often an alternate path you could take instead that is faster or just has some use. So here, you want to take the left path. This is the easiest thing you can do, and we're just going to go up here, stay on the ground, drift before that trick for better alignment here, and just look at how much time we're saving on the wiggler on the minimap. That is so much faster, and it's quite easy to do too. But of course, the beauty of Mario Kart is there always is another path. You can get a double box as you left trick here, wall, back to here, extra trick, trick off the end here, and you can shake trick to get some more height, get up here, extra trick right here, trick right there. You just gotta pretty much memorize where all those trick locations are. But yeah, that is extremely fast, and that is the fastest path you can take through there on Faraway Oasis. But of course, the beauty of Mario Kart is there's always a faster way to do everything. And so the actual fastest known path at this moment looks like this. We're going to charge jump over this rail, get a trick on the rail, charge jump right here to get up here, and then trick off early, hit the pole, and we'll get some massive airtime. Holy, that saves so much more time. Oh, that will not be covered in this video because it's a bit too tough, but stay tuned for a guide specifically on Faraway Oasis. Of course, that ending shortcut, very important. Now, there is also a very important feather shortcut at the end here. So it is the mushroom shortcut, but start off to the right here, turn really hard, and then you can feather like that, trick in the air to get a speed boost. And that is very important because when you feather, it sends you to the side. So you have to turn a lot sharper than you think you should. Now, one more very important strategy on Faraway Oasis is the golden mushroom strategy. If you get a golden mushroom, make sure you start using it right before the end of that bridge. That way, it's going to take you through 2 grass shortcuts here. Very, very good. But also, if you use it that early, it guarantees it's gone before the next item set, so you can grab more items. And that way, you get as many chances as possible to pull a mushroom for the final shortcuts. Whistlestop Summit is one of the most technical and difficult tracks in the game. So I'll start you off with some things you should know. The train tracks, if you can get to it at the start, is very, very fast. Trick off right here near the item boxes. And then you can do some more tricks here. And as you can see, I started in last place, and I already have a massive lead because the CPUs do not know to go for that path. Then, there's actually some more stuff you can go for here that I'm not going to cover because this is quite a bit tougher. But just to show you, you can do a gap jump just with a charge jump. I will show you an easier way to do that soon. And then, there's this one. You can take the ending shortcut without a mushroom. Like this. Look at that. Massive lead. I have not used a single item. There's also more stuff you can do here. So, yeah, we're not going to get too in-depth into all the most difficult strategies. That I will save for a special Whistlestop Summit guide. This is actually kind of funny. I've set them to hard CPUs, and they're so far behind. I haven't even used a single item, and I've gotten blue shelled. So if that goes to show you the skill ceiling on Whistlestop Summit, this is one track you can absolutely outskill your competitors every single time. And the strategies, the difficult ones, are actually very consistent. Look, I'm dodging red shells because I'm taking this path. This is actually such a good path. So yeah, a lot to learn on this track, but we'll start off with the basics. So now, instead of teaching you both of those difficult shortcuts, I'll teach you how to do them easily with a feather. The feather is a really good item on this track. And you might be wondering, hey, why are you not teaching me the hard stuff? Why the easy stuff? It's not just to get you started. It's also because I often do the easy strategies still. Or not easy, but like the safe strategies that I did earlier on before the hard ones. And that's because a lot of the time, like the hard paths get trapped or you get hit and you have to default to something easier. So here, you just like drift and feather on the ground. Very easy to take that shortcut with the feather. That gap jump, very important. And then here, if you just ride this rail all the way till the end here, and then at the middle of the yellow part, trick right, feather, as soon as you leave that part, you get right onto this rail. So that's the fastest 2 feather spots on this track. So yeah, like there's many different levels of difficulty of what you can do with strategies on each track. And just because something is harder and it is faster, that doesn't mean it is just the best. Because there are going to be times where, like, you know, let's say I get hit around right here, and then I don't have a feather, I can't do the charge jump shortcut, I still have to go around. And then, you know, it's not always safe to take the next rail shortcut because rails can be pretty dangerous getting bumped or hit off of them. So you'll still have to be able to do something like the feather shortcut. And maybe you can charge jump up here, and this gives you a safer route onto the feather path. And yeah, this is just important stuff to know in general. Just because it's not the fastest route doesn't mean it has no use. Knowing a lot of these early on can really help to build that foundation to help you become an even better player once you do know all the harder strategies. As for item play on Whistlestop Summit, the most important thing you should know is what you can do with the bullet bill. Just like the feather or a charge jump, the bullet bill can also take this gap jump. All you have to do is trick off and use your bullet bill in the gap. And often, just using this strategy is enough to guarantee a good spot. But of course, you cannot guarantee you get a bullet bill, so it is a risk to do this. Salty Speedway is the perfect example of why it's so hard to make a video like this, because there are just so many sections that have many things that you can do, and so it's hard to say, oh, like, here's the best path, because there's a lot of different things you could do depending on the situation. So I will just show you a few, but just keep in mind there are more, and we'll go more into depth in the Salty Speedway guide. So yeah, this I'll go more in depth in that in a sec, but like that's the most important thing to do there. Then you often want to go for the glider path up here, which is like over here on the left. You may not have even known about this. Yeah, this glider path, very safe, because if you get hit, you get launched forward, and you can even combo this with a mushroom shortcut onto the rail, which is also safer than being on the ground during this shortcut. Yeah, we'll go a little bit more in depth into all of this, and then just to show off, like, you know, there's so many paths I could even take right here, and then I can completely skip the water like this. It's just a completely crazy track. Yep. Sometimes, you know, great timing, CPU player. Sometimes you cannot take the top path because you get hit or bumped, so you can go here, get a double box, and then from here, let me show a more simple path. We're going to skip the complex stuff. You can still get up to the glider just by doing a charge jump right here. So this is the main stuff you want to know. But if you're not going for the glider, hang on, there's a blue shell. If you're not going for the glider, then you just want to take the path down here. Now, water is usually really slow, but this is a water stream that pushes you forward, so it's not that bad. And then you want to try and roll for items that can take the final shortcut, such as a super horn or a green shell. They both work. As you can see, a lot of items can be used to take that final shortcut. Okay, now let's go more in-depth into all of the most important things. So at the start of the race, you definitely want to charge jump onto the left side as early as you can after the boxes, and right before you land, start holding R again for another charge jump and release it a little bit after you get into the water here, and this makes it so you avoid as much water as possible. This next section is tricky and takes a lot of practice, but you need to charge jump facing forward towards the wall, and then close to the end of the wall, trick off. The landing can be weird because you might run into grass or you may barely land on here, so depending on exactly how you land, you may need to tap B or hold B a bit in order to not fall off of this path. And the next section is tricky too. You want to charge up an orange mini turbo and get really close to the boxes and then trick off to the right, and this will attach you to a wall that eventually lets you ride the rail. Once you're on the rail, you can trick to the left. After this point, there's a lot of paths that you can take here, and they will not always be available depending on who's near you and what items there are, so I'm not going to go into detail for this part. I will save that for a Salty Speedway guide. Next up, we have the ending shortcut, and this can be taken with so many items, so I will show you the most important ones that you need to know. The way the ending shortcut is supposed to be taken is with a mushroom or any invincibility item, and this takes you through the boxes. But you can use a lot of different attack items to get you through this. The most important one that you need to know is how to take it with a shell. You can get green shells in first place, which makes this very useful. You want to head over to the left so you get a view of the far right box. Then just charge jump in, and as soon as you have a shot at the box, you just throw the green shell forward and you can drift through the shortcut. If you're coming from the glider path and have a mushroom, then you can take the rail version of the shortcut, which is faster and is safer from other players' items. The way that I do this is after I enter the glider, I just make sure I'm going roughly straight and then watch the minimap. If you look at this line on the minimap to the upper left of where I'm traveling across, then just wait till you're about 2/3 of the way through that line, then you can hold down on the stick and mushroom at the same time. The glider will try to push you to the left, so you can hold down and slightly right on the stick to counter this. It's very tricky, but eventually it is consistent, and this lands you right on the rail. Once you're on the rail, you have to make sure you get to this final straight section before you trick off, otherwise you will run into the dividers, but that puts you on the next rail, and then the rest is easy. And the shortcut works exactly the same way if you have a feather. It's the exact same inputs, the feather also makes you go higher. Now, you can take the glider path shortcut with a green shell, but it's very different. I discovered this myself. I don't know if I'm the first person to discover this, but you can barely drive around the first box and then use the right stick on your controller to camera snipe the second box. It's too difficult for me to call this a must learn, but it's surprisingly consistent. Wario Shipyard has two very important shortcuts, especially because they help you skip over the water, which is a lot faster than driving in water. So first you want to charge jump on this boost panel, aim towards the crooked tree here, and then trick as soon as you touch the wall. And that helps you, we'll go into a little bit more detail with that in a moment, but yeah, that one is just a huge shortcut, gives you a huge lead. Then there's another one right here you may not have seen, which is charge jump up to here onto the rail, left trick at the end, hit this tree, and if you have a mushroom, you can take a shortcut, which I'll show in a sec, but otherwise you just go around. All right, so we'll do the charge jump thing again. This time I will use my mushroom. So left trick, hit the tree, and then as soon as you touch any bit of white, you use the mushroom and get a left drift. release the mini turbo near the end, and that helps you preserve the most speed. And there is also a great feather spot on the track. You just want a mini turbo trick off the end here, feather, trick in the air, and then you can still get another item here. And if you don't get any speed item, you can also drift through here, just mini turbo trick off of the off-road. As always, everything I'm showing you here is 100% consistent, but this first shortcut is actually pretty tough. The way that I do it is I try to charge jump near the bottom of the boost panel and aim towards the tree. It takes experience to really know where you're going, but then once you're about to hit the tree, right trick and this sends you further to the right. Then hitting the tree will probably launch you into the wall. As soon as you touch the wall, you want to trick off of the wall again, and this is best done with a shake trick so that the trick comes out right away. This is a very safe shortcut to go for because even if you fail it, all the ways you typically fail are still faster than going around. Cheep falls. Okay, I actually struggled to figure out how I want to present this one in this video, but I figured I'll just start by showing you all of the really cool stuff because it is a very mushroom-focused track. Like, there are a lot of big off-road shortcuts you need mushrooms for, is what you might think, but you can actually take all of them without a mushroom, like this. Look at that. That is so fast. It just caught up to everyone. Draft, get me away. And then there's also this next one, which is really cool. This one is called Tarzan. Yes, we're swinging through the trees. Let's go. Okay. And then there's another shroomless one at the end. I will teach this one, actually. This one is not too hard. You just fly through there like that. Ooh, blue shell for me to dodge. All right, so I'm not just going to show you Tarzan and not teach you how to do it. I would say this is not necessary until you're at quite a high level, especially because you can't even always go for it if someone bumps you or hits you near here, but here is how to do it. I would start by making sure you have enough coins, and a lot of players say at least 7 coins, but the more, the safer. As you come around this turn, release your orange mini turbo right after the shadow ends. Then this is the hardest part. You have to drive very precisely over a little bit of off-road to get onto this waterfall section, but not aim too far left because you then have to immediately turn to the right so you can get onto this next thin path. Even though going through the trees is the flashiest part, simply approaching the shortcut is way harder than any of that tree stuff. But if you successfully make it through, you want to trick from the water section to the dry section, and then drive off the section near the end facing slightly left. Trick off the end, and then we want to avoid the first section of wall. Do a left trick in the air to land you as early as possible on the next section of wall. Drive on this wall until you naturally get detached. Then shortly before you hit the first tree branch, do a left trick in the air and hold left. This will help you make it to the next tree. As soon as you hit the first tree, switch back to holding right. This makes it so that when you touch the next tree, you will start moving quickly to the right. Then you want to hit the thick part of this tree where it's pointing mostly forward. Then don't do any more air tricks, just try to stick the landing. Then right before you land, hold right R and B. This makes it so you'll immediately start brake drifting to the right, which gives you the best alignment coming out of the shortcut. If you're new to Mario Kart World, Tarzan is going to be one of the hardest things you ever learn, and honestly, I don't recommend it. It's really cool, but it's not completely necessary to help you win on Cheep Falls. Okay, so the 2 biggest shortcuts on the track are after this item set, so very important to try and get that item set if you don't have mushrooms yet. Then you can just go through this one easily like this. Huge shortcut. Oh, and then there's the next one coming up, which you do want to release a blue mini turbo as you head up to it and then just drive in. That gives you the easiest line through it, but the little airtime it gives you makes it really tough. And now if for some reason you don't have mushrooms going up to these shortcuts, like you could go for Tarzan if you knew how to do it, but like sometimes you're going for a mushroom and then you don't get a mushroom here. Oh, I did get one, but you can charge jump here, go really close to this rock and left charge jump, and then try to get around there. That is one way you can take that shortcut over there. And then you can also do this last one shroomless by doing an air trick here, charge jump, and then start turning right. And then just jump into that pole. That one takes some practice to get the alignment because turning is going to be a bit weird at first, but ultimately it's going to be pretty consistent. Now, because item play is so important on this track, I do want to give a little bit more advice with what to do with specific items that you can get. With the golden mushroom, you do want to save it all the way until right in this shortcut. Then if you use it right there and don't mess up afterwards, it will actually take you through both shortcuts. So just like that. And that is a massive time save. Compared to somebody who goes around, you are saving more than 6 seconds by taking both shortcuts. And another strategy is to use a star at the waterfall item set. If you use it right as you touch the boxes, this will barely take you through the first shortcut as well. And on lap 3, you can often get a shock dodge here because it is the best shock spot on the track, as it gets rid of everyone's items before the shortcuts. So if you chain a star here, especially on lap 3, that is a very powerful play. Choco Mountain pretty much has a huge chocolate shortcut on every turn, so I'm not going to have to explain this one too much, but I will show you some that you may not have seen before. So if you have one mushroom coming up to this section, you can get an orange mini turbo, and then immediately charge a charge jump towards this wall, and then get off right here, trick right there, and then you can mushroom through to finish that shortcut. Then there is a shortcut you can actually do without a mushroom, but it can be pretty tough. So you want to trick off the ends of these, of course, then aim a little bit more left, start a drift, and do some really good soft drifting, and hop in right before the light chocolate ends. And that takes you through the first shortcut with no mushroom. Now, because there are so many shortcuts on Choco Mountain, this is a very item play and shortcut heavy track. So if you have a star, the best place to use it is actually right here. This gets you an item right away, and you get to take 2 shortcuts with it. So yeah, this can immediately take you up to the front with a decent item from a lower spot. Another very powerful strategy you can use on this track with just one item, the golden mushroom, is to skip this second item set and instead go for this shortcut right here. And this is huge because not only does it take you through that shortcut, but it also takes you through this one. And it's barely enough for a golden mushroom. See how much time that saves? That is an incredible golden mushroom spot. The beginning of Shy Guy Bazaar is very interesting and very important. If you use the start boost to find one of these off-road bumps and trick on it, you can get on this rail. Then just ride it, and you get to take this upper path, which is a lot faster than the bottom path. It's so important, in fact. Watch, I'm in 5th, but the position counter isn't too good here. Check this out. I was actually in 1st that whole time, just because that's a very important path, and it's hard to make a comeback on this track because there are not a lot of shortcuts, so it's very important that you build a lead at the start, and it's hard for other players to come back. Then when you come back over here, there's an off-road shortcut, but you can go through like that, and then you just want to get right back on this rail. Then from here, it's like you just do a few tricks, and then you're right back onto these rails, and that'll help you front run for the next lap. Overall, this path is quite easy, but the only difficult part is going from the red rail onto the ropes. It's very common to mess this part up, and the way that I do it is I trick right where this coin is. Pretty much the moment that you touch the coin, if you trick, you will land on the first rail. However, if you are in any sort of speed boost, whether from a trick or an item or a draft, it is extremely easy to fall off here, and this is disastrous. So instead, there is another way to go from the red rail onto the ropes. And this is the method I used to use a lot, and I'm very happy that I still know how to do it because it's helpful a lot of the time. So what I used to do is I would right trick at this curve, and then there's this straight section of diagonal rail. I would trick at the end of that, and this puts me at the farther rope. This is a bit slower, but I would say this is more consistent if you know what you're doing. And keep in mind, that's just for if you were in a trick boost. If you're in any sort of bigger speed boost like a golden mushroom or a mega mushroom, then you actually want to trick at the beginning of that straight segment, and that puts you on the farther rail. This is very important to know for strong speed boosts like mushrooms, mega mushrooms, and drafts. And it's much easier to make it onto the rail this way than if you go for the faster way, which is best done with no speed boost. Now, I also want to point out that this is technically no longer the fastest path you can do in this section. There is actually a faster way to take this section that involves landing at a very precise spot on the wall and then doing some precise stuff with the rails and then having a very precise charge jump later. That all of this is actually quite difficult, and I'll save that for a dedicated Shy Guy Bazaar guide. Even though this path is faster and very useful a lot of the time, it does not get you an item box, whereas the slower path gets you a double box. So just because the slower path is slower doesn't mean it's useless. In fact, you do want to go for the slower path a lot of the time, and it should be the main way that you learn at first, since it is much easier. Wario Stadium is my favorite track in the game. It's one of the most difficult and technical tracks, just like Whistlestop Summit. And I'm going to show you this beginning path first. This is the fastest way to take the beginning section. You go up here, you trick off for a little shortcut. I'm already near first, but then I come up here and do a bunch of tricks. Whoa, Rosalina, why are you up here? CPUs never come up here. And then, yeah, this is extremely fast. Look at my lead on the minimap. But the most important thing is to be able to take this charge jump, as this charge jump only, just this, saves more time than everything I did leading up to this. And look, my lead has grown massively. This charge jump here as well, huge time saves. And then, of course, there is the ending shortcut here, which you should be taking whenever you can, as it saves a lot of time. That whole beginning rail section is difficult, and it is more difficult than it looks. There's a lot of ways you can fail it, and so if you want to learn this, I'm not going to teach it now. It's too much. Here is a Wario Stadium guide that I uploaded recently. It covers literally everything you need to know about this track if you want to win online. It is very long, but most track guides will not be that long, and eventually I should have a guide for every track. In that guide, I also cover how to do this charge jump shortcut, but I will go over it again here as it doesn't take as much explaining. This is very difficult, but the concept is simple. After coming around the turn, you have to charge a charge jump, and you have to release the charge jump at the same time that you touch the coin. And the spot that you're aiming for is you have to land right above the white sign on the wall, but above the left half of the white sign. If you get both of those correct, then you should be able to make it every time. Afterwards, there's a charge jump here that there's really no reason not to go for this. Start the charge jump at the first boost panel, and then release it right before this big gray beam in the ground. You actually save half a second doing this because you go more forward instead of up from this ramp. And it's very easy, so there's no reason not to do it. Now, if you have mushrooms, then you actually can just take this shortcut with the mushroom, and you don't need to aim anywhere in particular. You'll just make it up to the top if you mushroom before you charge jump. Then for the ending shortcut, you may actually be doing this incorrectly and slow. So if you just drift and get a mini turbo and go around again, look at how terrible that line is through the shortcut. That is very, very common. So if you are taking the shortcut, make sure you drift and don't get a mini turbo. Then the next drift will take you through a great line through the shortcut, and that saves a lot more time. A very powerful strategy you can do on Wario Stadium with the star is if you chain it into the final item box, then this barely makes it through the next shortcut. This is very powerful because you can take two really good items into a top spot without even having to use either of them on the shortcut. DK Pass, again, one of the more technical and difficult tracks with a lot of strategies you have to know, but that does mean if you do know them, you can build some pretty big leads on this track, and this is one of my favorites. So, starting off with this inconspicuous wall on the left, if you charge jump just right, you can climb this wall really high, and look at how much of the map I skip. I'm just in first place. You can then dive off the track here and jump back on. And then there's also a little rail right here that leads onto the wall, onto the trees. And if you do this just right, it skips so much of the off-road, and you can hop at the end to go through most of this. Yes, that last part is worth it. Then the next shortcut you will need a mushroom for, so I'll show that later once I have a mushroom. Oh, a feather works too. I'll show that on the next lap. So, there's other paths here too. Like sometimes you're going to be locked out of taking a certain path for some reason. Like, you know, Kamek hits me a little bit later and I may not be able to take this turn. So, oh, chain chomps too. I can't take it. You can take this pole instead, which is the old fastest path, the day one fastest path. Then there's also this pole you can charge jump onto right here. And this is a little turn skip that leads straight onto this rail where you can do the whole tree shortcut again. But there is something else you can do. Let me rewind through this blue shell. There is something else you can do instead, which is if you want a double item box, because remember, the tree shortcut skips the item. So if you want a double item box, you can still go through it and trick as early as you can, neutral trick off this rail, hold left, do a bunch of left tricks, and that takes you to the tree. Okay, now we are going to need a mushroom. Okay, I finally got my mushroom. This is the ending shortcut. It looks easy, but you gotta make sure that you drive a little bit into the off-road and then use the mushroom. That way you can hold that mini turbo all the way out. I didn't do it perfectly there, but the important part is you delay the mushroom use a little bit to help your mini turbo. Okay, I know there's a lot to talk about on this track, so I'm not going to go too in-depth. I'll save that for a DK Pass guide because it will be so necessary. We'll start with the first wall shortcut. Getting the alignment for the charge jump is a bit tough, but you want to make sure you're as far left as possible, close to the off-road, and then drive at this wall at a 45-degree angle and aim specifically for that line down the middle. If you do this just right, you will ride the wall very high, and then around this faint white vertical bit of snow, you can trick off and do left tricks in the air in order to put you at the right spot. You're in the off-road, driving slow, but it skips so much that it is so worth it as long as you have a high handling stat so you can still turn and drive out of this section. The next section is very lenient. It might look difficult, but you really just drive off the road and then trick back on. The only really difficult thing left is the tree shortcut. This saves a lot of time, so it's really worth learning, and it is honestly, it's hard, but it is easier than it looks. As you ride this rail, trick to the left at the second last black bar. Then, as you approach the wall, there's this long, faint, dark line, and you want to trick again right there. At this point, you should be holding right to try and get to the tree, but about halfway before you get to the tree, switch to holding left. This is going to make it so that when you hit the tree, you can move further to the left to hit the next tree. Then this is optional but can help with alignment, and you can't even see it here because the tree is already blocking, but right before hitting the tree, you can input a left trick, and this helps you move even further to the left. Okay, I know that probably sounded like a lot, but as long as you get that part correctly, then the rest is free. From here, you just do as many left tricks as you need in order to hit the next tree, and that's it. You'll land just before the off-road, and you want to hop over as much of that off-road as you can. If you are unable to make the shortcut, the mistake that you are making is most likely starting from when you jump off the wall to when you hit the first tree. As long as that part is correct, then the rest of the shortcut should work out fine. Now, because there are a lot of shortcuts on this track, it's very important to know the best options you have with different kinds of shortcut items. So we will start with the golden mushroom. You want to go for that shortcut on the left there, but if you can't, for some reason, then you can go around here and do a double shortcut with the golden mushroom. You take this shortcut, avoid the snowball, and then take this shortcut after, and it changes right into an item box. That is very, very useful. There is another golden mushroom spot that is overlapping with this one, so you cannot do both, but if you're coming out of this shortcut here, the big one we talked about, you can go for the wall here, jump off a bit earlier, and golden through here. Even if you don't do the wall thing, it's fine, you can still golden through there, then just do some drifts, don't worry about mini turbos, just get the right alignment, and this barely makes it through all of those shortcuts. Really good golden spot. And then one more is, you can start your golden mushroom here at the item box. It only takes this one shortcut, so you might be saying, why not just start golden mushrooming here? Well, if you start too late, you cannot get another item at the next set. So that's another important one, but not as important as the other two, of course. And another great strategy is to chain the star into the final item set. When you do this, the star will barely make it through the next shortcut, and this is very powerful because you get to take two really good items through the shortcut without having to use any of these, so you get to save these for later. And if you use these at good spots, then you can potentially do really well in the race. Sky High Sundae is not a very shortcut-based track, but there are some things that are very important to know, and most things you have to do on this track are not that difficult. So let me grab the items here, because this is actually important. If I grab two items here and press L right away, see how I only see my first item? It was a mushroom, so I got lucky. But what you should be doing instead, just to make sure you see both of your items, because what if your mushroom showed up in the second slot? Then you can't take the shortcut. So what you should do instead is after you grab your items, wait until the second trick ramp to press L. And then, this way, you will always be able to see both of your items. That way you can guarantee you take the shortcut if either slot gave you a shortcut item. Then, of course, there is this shortcut down the middle here, which, I don't know, it's not much of a shortcut. It's probably a bit faster, not that important. The most important shortcut is the ending shortcut, which is you jump off here and you ride the wall. This is extremely important, very fast, and you should be taking it whenever you can. This wall shortcut is not very difficult. You can grab an item and just trick off the track, then hold right to try and get back on the wall. You want to land relatively low on the wall. You don't have to be as low as possible, but you just want to be relatively low. Then just ride the wall for a bit before doing each trick. That way you get a little bit of that trick boost before you jump off. And ideally, your last trick should bump into the wall, and you should hear the wall detach sound. That means you won't get a trick boost, so once you're in the air after this point, you have to do an air trick. Now, as for item play, the most important thing if you get a bullet bill is you can just jump off the track. You just jump off over here and then use the bullet. That is extremely fast. The ending section's a bit slow too. The bullet's really fast during this section, and getting a bullet at the end of the track is just so good. Toad's Factory has pretty much only two shortcuts. You can charge a charge jump onto this rail and trick off at that ring. And then that's barely a shortcut, but there is one shortcut at the very end. Oh, my own dad got me. Okay, so the ending shortcut, you can do this with a mushroom. You just trick off to the side here, and then, whoa, And then make sure you look forward here. You want to look at these boost panels and don't miss it like my dad did. But you can do this without a mushroom. So to do this without a mushroom, all you have to do is go for this beam, ride it a bit and trick neutral, and then trick to the right at the orange thing. And then here, you can ride these rails at the end to take the final shortcut. But it's not actually that simple because these tractors move. As you can see, I can't even rewind through because they're busy moving. So depending on the exact cycle, you may have to improvise something different. So let me give you just one example here, but there are many possibilities. So here, trick off here, and I look forward, and I can just drive here onto the boost panel. So yeah, depending on the exact cycle, you may need to trick in different directions or just aim straight for this boost panel. Very, very important in general in this section to look forward. Otherwise, you can mess it up and lose a lot of spots for it. So much of Airship Fortress is really just rails if you want to take the fastest path. So the CPUs don't know it, so we're going to do a quick little comparison here of how much faster the rails are compared to just driving on the ground. As you can see, I have not really taken a shortcut, but I have completely dominated them here. And then there's not really any big shortcuts besides right at the end. For the ending shortcuts, there are a few ways you can take it. The fastest way looks like this with the charge jump and mushroom. Oh, I got bumped, but it still worked. As you can see, it can be a bit dangerous to go for this because you're locked into a very, very, very specific line. And the way you want to do this one is, you just start the charge jump quite early, actually. You can even start it right here and just start aiming, and then mushroom. And as long as your angle isn't too perpendicular to the rail, you will make it. However, of course, you can just mushroom through the off-road like this, and this is a lot safer. Then on the next lap, if it's safe, you just want to go for the rail. So the rail path is pretty simple. It's mostly just doing tricks, but then right when you get to this 45-degree turn, you want to trick to the right. It is quite lenient with the trick timing, but if you are unable to get this trick timing, then try changing it up. Try going earlier or later until you figure it out. Getting every single trick that I'm doing here can be very difficult, especially the one on the red rail where I trick to the right. Getting this one to work is pretty specific, and even if you get it most of the time, failing it can be disastrous, so I recommend not going for that one specifically. Then the most important thing is when the red rail curves for the second time, then you neutral trick off the end here, and this puts you on a good line into the next turn. Now, of course, when you're playing in real races, especially against good players, often there will be items flying on these rails or players to bump you off the rails, so it's important to decide when not to take these rails because it can very often be unsafe, and even though it is slower and feels bad not to take the rails, keep in mind that a bad option is still better than the worst option, which is getting hit on the rails. However, if you're in first place, you should try to take these rails as much as possible if you are safe, because it helps to extend your lead. There's a great strategy on Airship Fortress. If you are starting in first place, you can often keep first place, and this is a huge advantage. After the start boost, you want to go off to the right and do one trick on the right rail, then trick to the left and head over to the left rail. This is usually fast enough to keep first, and often you can just win the race because it's so valuable to be in first. And there is one more strategy on Airship Fortress that is extremely important, perhaps the best bullet bill spot in the entire game. As soon as you get to these two red rails, you can activate the bullet bill, and this will take you extremely far. It lasts for about 14 seconds, which is almost double the usual length, and it will take you entirely through the spiral. And if you've played through the spiral, you know getting hit or bumped or shocked here is horrible, so the bullet is extremely good. But one thing you want to keep in mind is the bullet will stop if it passes half of the players in front of you. This is not just a tip for Airship Fortress, this is a tip for every track, but it's especially important here because you definitely want the bullet to get to the spiral before ending so it gets to that bullet extension zone. So if you're unsure, you can use the bullet right before the glider, and this pretty much guarantees it's not passing too many players before then, but ideally you should actually watch the mini-map to see how many players are in front of you and will likely get past. This is a tough skill, but it is important if you want to get the maximum benefit out of your bullet. Acorn Heights is my best track right now, as there are a ton of ways you can take the ending shortcut, and I'm really good at all of them, and a lot of players are not. I'll show you the most important way you want to know how to take it. Is to left trick right here, and then hold B as soon as you attach to the wall, and then do some shake tricks. I'll go a little bit more in depth in that one in a moment. That is the easiest way that you can do the ending shortcuts, but I will actually teach two ways you can do it without a mushroom. And the second way also involves going up onto this rail. And then you just drop off the end here, do a trick, and then don't trick, land in a charge jump, go here, and then go like this. This is actually a faster way to take it, but it is a little bit more difficult. I would say both are not that difficult, and there are actually reasons to know both of them. And then, of course, these ending vines, you got to make sure you know how to take those. There are actually like 10 different ways you can take this ending shortcut, and a lot of them are important, so I will save that for an Acorn Heights guide. For now, the two most important methods for the first one: ride the first rail until the dip and trick to the rail on the right, and then ride this rail until the second last flower and trick to the left. You don't have to be super precise with these, you're just trying to get onto the wall. Now, as soon as you attach to the wall and you see your boost come out, hold left and hold B at the same time, and you should not be holding A right now. Your goal is to slow down as much as possible. You will naturally detach from the wall after a bit. At this point, shake your controller to do a trick. This will reattach you to the wall. Then you will fly off the end of the wall and shake your controller again, and this will give you a trick that will allow you to attach to the final wall. Then, of course, just jump off that wall at the end. The second way of doing this shortcut is a little tougher, but it is a bit faster and definitely worth learning. Ride the first rail to the end and then do an air trick. Then when you land on the leaf, you should just be holding left. Drive off this leaf with no trick, and right before you land on the ground, you should release left and hold R. This starts charging a charge jump without accidentally drifting. Once the charge jump is charging, you want to then hold left again and get as close as you can to the off-road without actually driving into it. Once the charge jump is ready, charge up to the left to ride the wall. For this next part, there is no visual cue on when to jump off the wall. I instead use a timing cue. You'll get used to it. You stay on the wall for the exact same amount of time every time before jumping, and you will always hit the pole. You will auto trick on the pole and then just aim for the next wall and you're good to go. This second method is faster and it is more versatile because if for some reason you could not take the rails, you can just approach this from the ground and still make it. Although it's not a consistent setup, so you will need to practice this one separately. However, if a shock has happened recently and it is still raining, this makes the road slippery, and charging a charge jump while turning is completely different. So I would not recommend going for this version of the shortcut in the rain, and this is why it's good to know the wall shortcut as a backup. So if you're going to learn any one shortcut, learn the wall version. But there are benefits to knowing both. Then for the ending rails, it's just important that you get the visual cues of when to jump off at each rail. On the first rail, you want to jump off just before the first coin, and you will still go through the first coin if you do it like this. Then on the next rail, you want to jump off as soon as you get to the first flower. Then on the final rail, you can jump off right after collecting 2 coins. Starview Peak only has one shortcut, so you want to make sure your game plan is centered around making sure you have a mushroom for this shortcut, and don't use them randomly throughout the track. So you just want to start your charge jump right before the box. You can even chain an item box here, and then charge jump to the right, and this puts you right on the rail. It looks really precise, but it's actually easier than it looks. And then afterwards, you want to make sure you stay on this section. It can be a bit unsafe because it is a very thin road and you could get bumped or hit off, so keep that in mind, but it is a lot faster being on ground compared to being on water. Peach Beach does not have a lot of stuff you need to know. You can charge jump here. It's not a huge time save, but the most important part is near the middle of lap 2, there is a shortcut, but you have to keep in mind how this one works. It is a box shortcut, like Salty Speedway. However, there is a double layer of boxes. So we're going to come up to it and just take a closer look here. If I get a better camera angle, as you can see, there are 2 layers of boxes here. So you can use a mushroom to get through because mushrooms always break boxes, but you got to keep in mind that if the boxes are still all there, then something like a green shell will not work because the second layer of boxes will still be there. And just like other box shortcuts, it is possible to take the shortcut if somebody else in front of you has broken the boxes. And there is actually another box shortcut on this track, but this one is a single box, so you can go through it with attack items very easily. And a mushroom, of course, still works. And part of why this is so much faster is because ground is just faster than water. But the most important thing to keep in mind on Peach Beach is not even really a shortcut, but it kind of is. For almost all of lap 3, you're going to be driving on a straight line in water, and even if you've built a big lead, you may find that when you race on this track, your lead just vanishes and you always lose. And there's actually a really good explanation for why that happens. Even though there's no shortcuts at the end, the way that water works, remember, water gives you a speed debuff. But all the speed items, like Star, Mega Mushroom, Mushroom, Bullet, all of the speed items ignore the water speed debuff, and they give the speed boost that they should be giving. In other words, every speed item is a lot faster here than usual. And that's why the ending of Peach Beach can be very random. If you have speed items, often you can just come back. But if the shock happens at a time where everyone loses their speed items, then the players in the front can still do well. But anyone who dodges the shock almost has an automatic win because they still have speed items. This is just something to keep in mind because even though it is a straight line at the end and it doesn't look like there are any shortcuts, this entire section is basically a shortcut, and so you have to keep in mind you can get past and design your strategy around potentially having speed items for the end. Dry Bones Burnout starts with the shortcuts, although this one does not save that much time. You can charge jump onto this wall, wait for your boost to turn orange, and then jump off, and then you have a nice little speed boost. But the most important shortcuts on Dry Bones Burnout are all at the very end. Now, the ending of Dry Bones Burnout is actually quite interesting. I'll show you a few things you can do. This, not mandatory. You can take a simpler way onto that rail. But then the most basic mushroom shortcut you want to take is by going on the left path here, and then go on the wall, detach off the wall, and then air trick again here, and then you can mushroom through this. And that is the fastest way to do a one mushroom shortcut at the end in the most basic way. So this is the simpler way of getting onto the rail. You also don't have to take the rail in case it's not safe, but if you have multiple mushrooms, you can actually mini turbo trick off this first ramp and mushroom through here. Then you can get a trick on the off-road and jump off the wall, and then take this ending shortcut as well. So there are a lot of options for what you can do in this section, and it really just depends on how many mushrooms you have. If you somehow find yourself on the bottom path, there's a 3 mushroom or golden mushroom strategy here. Actually, golden mushroom is better. You can do this with 2 mushrooms. You can just go over here. Yeah, this is a 2 mushroom strategy, my bad. And then go over here. So you can use a golden mushroom for that one as well. Now, if you have a feather, which you can get in first place, you can take some cool shortcuts with it. So, first off, if you take this regular path onto the wall, then trick off the wall and feather, then you can take this path over here, which is a lot safer, especially on lap 3, because you get a glider, which can potentially dodge the shock. But it also keeps you away from other players. You can also go on to the bottom path, like I showed earlier here, and then trick onto the wall, trick off this, and feather as well. And this also takes you onto the same glider path. Besides being shortcuts, the main benefits of those is that they're safe, but there's a really fast one right here, which is you mini turbo and trick on the wood there, and this actually is the biggest feather shortcut, at least that I know of, on this track. The only problem is it doesn't put you on the glider and away from other racers, so it could be unsafe, so that is a judgment call for you to make in a race of which one is better. When you play against good players on Dry Bones Burnout, the ending shortcuts are extremely important, which means you want to have speed items for the end or you're just going to lose. But it's very important to keep in mind that all of the shortcuts are after the final item set, which means if somebody uses the shock into the final item set, you cannot take the ending shortcuts anymore. For this reason, this is one of the best shock spots in the entire game, especially on lap 3. So a very good strategy you can use, especially against better players, is to try and get an invincibility item in your first slot and at least 1 mushroom in your second slot. Then you can go through the final item box using your invincibility item, and this often dodges the shock. So not only do you get a shock dodge, but most players in front of you cannot take the shortcuts while you can, and this can guarantee you a very high position. Next up is Mario Circuit, and for this one, I figured I would just show you a classic example of when I play against competitive players. You can go forward at the start, but because there are so many shortcuts on this track, it's actually very powerful to get at least triple mushrooms at the start. If you get 2 boxes in a bottom spot, you can get triple mushroom star, which is really good, but just triple mushrooms is already very good. At the beginning, you just want to get a few coins, usually at least 4 coins, and you're good to go. More is better, but you don't have to go out of your way for them. And then the most important shortcut happens on lap 2. As you enter lap 2, you're going to see this massive off-road, and it is a 2 mushroom shortcut. So use 2 of your mushrooms right there. Then there is another shortcut right after that, and you can use another mushroom here. That uses up 3 of your mushrooms, so you can grab another box here and hold this rainbow mini turbo all the way until the turn, and you can skip this turn. From here, it's not perfectly clear what you should do, but my favorite thing to do is use the star at this item set before the big turn. This is a great spot to use an invincibility item because a lot of players are now starting to make their comebacks since it's near the end of the race, and you can very easily get hit, not to mention the shock could happen here, but most likely is not happening any earlier than this because it takes time for the shock to show up. If you have mushrooms after this point, you can just continue to take shortcuts. And so other than the few shortcuts I mentioned at the start, it's hard to say if any of these shortcuts are the most important, because in the ideal scenario, after this sharp turn, you should just take every shortcut that you can. None of these shortcuts are particularly difficult, but if you watch the world record, you'll see some crazy charge jump shortcuts, and honestly, if you just want to win on this track, you don't have to do all this stuff. I haven't even learned it. So on one hand, you can call me a fraud, but on the other hand, that's evidence that you don't need to know these in order to win on Mario Circuit. As you can probably tell, Desert Hills is a very off-road shortcut, single mushroom-based track like this. Taking these shortcuts is extremely important, and if you don't have items for it, if you don't have good item strategy on this track, you often will lose. You can take this one too. That is the biggest one on the track. You can get an orange mini turbo coming out, and then there is this shortcut at the end as well. Oh, you can get a trick there. I kind of missed it. But yeah, those are 3 shortcuts you can take with mushrooms. Of course, there are more shortcuts like this green patch. But if you are front running, you will not have mushrooms. So I'm going to show you how you can take these without needing any item at all. It is more difficult, but if you are going to front run Desert Hills, it will be a necessity or you'll be going too slow. So first you can drift through this coin, charge jump here, aim to the right. You can even land on this ledge right here. And then we have the next shortcut. Like this. Oh, that was not the cleanest, but I made it. Yeah, so those two absolutely necessary, especially the second one. If you have a single mushroom for the first one, that's good, but the second one, super important if you want to be able to win at a high level on Desert Hills. For this first shortcut, honestly, I recommend just having at least triple mushrooms so you can do this once per lap. And how to do this one with a mushroom is actually a bit trickier than you might expect. It actually starts all the way back at the item boxes. When you trick, you want to head over a bit to the right, then trick on the first bump, and make sure you get a trick on this second bump. If you trick on the second bump, you will be able to land right after the next bump and start your drift really early so that when you mushroom through, you will already have an orange mini turbo charged as you come out. This is very important because the off-road is not forgiving and you can easily lose your drift in the off-road and not get a mini turbo at all. Okay, but now looking at this shortcut without a mushroom. Aim for the coin and do a right drift through it, but don't get a mini turbo and don't do any trick. Right before you land from this bump, hold R to charge a charge jump, and now you should be aiming at this post from very far left. That way you can move to the right. Your charge jump will barely charge, and then do a right charge jump and make sure you hit the pole, and then this will launch you all the way to the right side where you can get another trick. For the next shortcut, it's important to be good at soft drifting. I have a video on what soft drifting is, but make sure you're good at that as the mini turbo may be hard to charge. You have to charge an orange mini turbo and line it up so that you end up being as close as possible to the patch of off-road on your left side. There's going to be a shadow line on the ground, and this is my visual cue for when to release the mini turbo and immediately hold R for a charge jump. Then you should aim to drive just to the right of the torch. Now, for some reason, there's no torch here. I guess it got knocked down, but in regular races, usually you will see a torch there. But even if you don't see one, then you want to be aiming for the advertisement boards near the left side. As soon as the charge jump is charged, release it, and you should be very, very close to the edge of the road. As long as you release it right away, this will give you a boosted charge jump because you had a boost as you did the charge jump, and this is how you launch all the way to the wall. After you get to the wall, just detach and do an air trick and do the couple of tricks afterwards on these trick ramps. The key for this shortcut comes all the way back to when you release the orange mini turbo. All of the timings are tied together, so it's important to release this at just the right time. When you play Desert Hills against good players, typically if they have the shock, they will use it at the first item set or second item set on lap 3. And the reason I mention this is because it is very important to have shortcut items for the ending. And the shock can remove your shortcut items, so that's why it's important to protect against it. If you have 2 shock dodge items and you can protect against it, then great, you're good for both item sets. But if you only have 1 shock dodge item, it's typically better to try and dodge the shock at the second item set because after that is where all the biggest shortcuts are. So it's very important that you protect your items going into this section. Boo Cinema does not have any big things you need to know, but there are some little things, like tricking over to here and then tricking to the right here, and that's a little bit faster than going on the ground, but it can be less safe because of the rails. Now when you enter this section, usually on lap 1, if you look at the peaches, they're going forward, which means you want to be right here as this section is moving forward. And then now you see the Peaches are moving backwards, so you don't want to be on that section because that will send you backwards, and you want to stay slightly to the side. You can memorize that on lap 1 and lap 3, it will both be like that, and on lap 2, it will be the opposite. Then here, you can shake trick to trick on this coin right here, and then do a mini turbo trick right here, and do a trick right here, get on the wall, and detach from the wall trick, and do that, and then do a mushroom shortcut. All of that is exactly as difficult as it looks. You just have to memorize exactly what to do. There's not really much to explain on that one. The only thing I will say for that ending sequence, because the ending sequence is very important, and if you miss the tricks, you'll be very slow. The easiest way to trick on this first ramp is to make sure you touch a coin and shake your controller. This seems to be the most consistent way. And then for the next two, you have to make sure you are in a speed boost or it will not let you trick. And for both of them, you want to be as far right as possible, as that seems to be the better trickable region. So for the first one, I release a mini turbo, and I trick a little bit earlier than the peak of the road there. Then for the next one, I'm in a trick boost, so I don't need another speed boost, and I just drive closer to the right, and again, trick just before the peak of it. Going on the wall is optional, but just make sure you get those tricks beforehand. Dandelion Depths doesn't really have shortcuts. It's mainly the shortcut at the very end that you want to hold your mushrooms for, because that shortcut is massive. But there is still stuff to do in the water section. You want to avoid water as much as possible, so you want to drive on this section in the middle here. And you can do a trick there, do a trick here, try to stay on the land as much as possible. And then we come up to the ending section with the boost panels. Left and right path are about the same speed. Then for the ending shortcuts, you want to do it like DK Pass, where you drift in a bit before using your mushroom. Like that, use the mushroom, and this way, you come out with your drift. Otherwise, you could potentially lose your drift and your entire mini turbo to the off-road. Peach Stadium has 2 grass shortcuts, and the first one is right here. This is actually so important that it's often worth slowing down for an item box at the start. Look, I just caught up to exactly where I was before I did that, but with better items. And this works a lot online too. It's not exclusive to racing against the bots. Now at the end of Peach Stadium, a lot less important, but there is another grass shortcut that you can take right here. It's a bit too big for one mushroom, so charge a charge jump as you do it, and then jump at the end. And that's the fastest way to do that one. Just 2 grass shortcuts, but there also is a feather shortcut. If you have a feather, the best spot for it is actually just the beginning shortcut, because the beginning shortcut is already so big, so you mini turbo and then use the feather, and that launches you a bit further through. So yeah, that's the best feather spot, but there is a Nintendo-intended feather shortcut on this track as well. So this one's actually really easy. You just feather on this boost panel and trick in the air. And that's it. Trick in the air, and you land right here. You go around this turn, get an orange mini turbo, and you can jump off. For DK Spaceport, I want to show you an example from a real race. All of the shortcuts on this track are really simple because it's all just mushroom off-road shortcuts. The best strategy you can do at the start is to wait and get at least triple mushrooms, if not a second item for triple mushroom star. Then drive forward, and yes, you will be in the back, but this is literally faster than going forward. And unlike most tracks where I think there's reason to go forward and reason to wait for items, I think on DK Spaceport, you should just get your items. Now, there is a little gap jump that you can do after the glider that is completely shroomless. You should always go for this. But then afterwards, it's just a mushroom shortcut on every single turn. So of course, it's a massive advantage to already have 4 mushroom shortcuts for the total of 5 shortcuts that you will be seeing ahead of you. So you can just use one per lap and try not to get bumped. Then when you use your last mushroom, you want to use it right before you pick up the item. That way you get another one, and you can see if you get more mushrooms afterwards. And if you do, that's great. You can star through the next shortcut and have more mushrooms for the final shortcut. And if you didn't get mushrooms, you can get rid of the star and your next item before the previous item set and still potentially have mushrooms for the ending. That's why the strategy is so powerful. It guarantees that you can take almost every single shortcut and gives you one chance at dodging the shock. Now, this is the best strategy, but of course it is not a guaranteed win. Other players can do the same thing as you, and you may not be playing safe enough and you could get hit or bumped off the track. So it's very important to make sure that you stay as safe as possible as you do this strategy. I think it's a bit unfortunate that this strategy is so powerful on DK Spaceport that I don't really feel like other strategies are very viable, but that's just kind of the way it is. And finally, we have Rainbow Road, the final track in Mario Kart World. For now. Until DLC, maybe? But I've turned the items to feathers only, Not because you're going to get a lot of feathers on this track, but because the mushroom shortcuts are very obvious. I'll show you where they are, and the feather shortcuts are less obvious, plus there's a lot of nice shroomless shortcuts. So I will be showing you all of those. So first up, when you get to the split path, you'll always want to take the path on the right, and drift around the first turn. And when you get to the second turn, the fastest way to take this shortcut is to charge up an orange mini turbo, release it a bit late, and turn left. And that gives you the greatest chance to make it over this gap. It is consistent, but a bit tough. The reason we turn left is so that you go uphill, and so that we're landing at a lower spot from a higher spot. It's a bit difficult, especially with lower handling, so if you want an easier method, you can still charge up the orange mini turbo and do a charge jump. And this lets you, look, I cut a horrible angle, I could have done that way better, but I still made it because the charge jump just gives me enough height. For this next section, if you have mushrooms, specifically at least 2 mushrooms or a golden mushroom, that is the best because you want to use it at this off-road shortcut right here on my left. That is the first important cut, and then the next one is the ramp off-road shortcut that you can see right here, which you can also do with a feather. So yeah, very important. A golden mushroom can also make it through both of those. And then there's also a very important feather shortcut that saves a ton of time coming up here. You want to stay on the left path. Now, usually you head to the right path, but if you want to take the feather shortcut, you stay on this path. Then wait for around when the track splits. Mini turbo off here and do the feather shortcut. Look, I am in first from whatever spot I was, just goofing around the whole time. In the space station section, of course, there is a mushroom shortcut on the left here. You can see what I mean. They are very obvious. A feather is not really worth it to take that one, but there is a good feather shortcut coming up. Okay, so take the right path here. And then after this thwomp, you can do a charge jump, release it near the end. Feather, do a trick in the air, and that takes you through that entire turn. Very nice. Now, this is the least obvious shortcut of all time, but when you get to this glider, you want to hold down so you go up faster. Hold down on the stick. Just like that, and then you can stop now. If you have mushrooms here, also golden mushroom, very important to use it there. It's also a shortcut. It's ridiculously fast, and I'm not really sure why. All right, now as you head into this glider after the boost panels, there's going to be a massive turn skip shortcut. This entire turn is going to get skipped. All right, so we aim for this line. Let me focus. Hit the pole. And then barely get out at the end. That is such a fun shortcut right at the end of Rainbow Road 2. It's quite difficult, but I'll give you a little tutorial on it now. Near the end of this glider, you want to start descending down and aim for this exact line on the ground that I'm following. Charge a charge jump and jump off near the end. Stay close to the wall, and when your vehicle has just descended below ground level, trick to the right. Then you'll ride the wall and trick near the top of it. The next part takes experience. You want to do as many left tricks as it takes to barely hit the pole. But don't go too far left or you'll go out of bounds. Then after hitting the pole, pull right just a little bit to avoid another out of bounds zone, and then head over to the left again. As long as you avoid the out of bounds near the pole and practice this one a lot, it is very consistent, and I regularly go for this in real races. In fact, every single thing that I showed you in this video is a strategy that I regularly go for in real races to help me win. Of course, there are so many more techniques than what I've shown you today, but some of them are either less useful or inconsistent, and I've only shown you the ones that I think are important and you should be going for regularly. But knowing how to take shortcuts is only half the battle. Learning how to make quick decisions and have effective item strategy is just as important for helping you win races in Mario Kart. So if you want to see me go for all this stuff under high pressure, then check out some of my gameplay videos. Or if you just want to learn some racing and item strategy, then check out my full guide on how to improve in Mario Kart World. That's it for this one, and I hope you enjoy the game.